Ever felt like you're drowning? Not in water, but in your own thoughts, fears, and endless worries about tomorrow? Yeah, me too. We all have those moments where life feels like carrying a backpack full of rocks up a steep mountain. What if I told you there's a way to drop that backpack and walk free? Picture this. You're at the beach, holding onto a piece of driftwood while massive waves crash around you. Your knuckles are white from gripping so tight. But here's the thing. The moment you let go, you realize you can actually swim. You were always able to swim. The wood wasn't helping you float. It was weighing you down. That's exactly what happens when we learn the art of letting go. Buddhism has been teaching this for thousands of years, and honestly, it's time we listened. Not because some ancient text says so, but because it actually works. When you stop clinging to everything like your life depends on it, something magical happens. You start living. Think about it. How much energy do you waste trying to control things that are completely out of your control? Your ex's new relationship, your boss's mood, the weather ruining your perfect weekend plans. It's exhausting, isn't it? I remember spending entire weekends worrying about Monday morning meetings, literally wasting 2 perfectly good days being anxious about something that hadn't even happened yet. And when Monday came, the meeting was usually fine, sometimes even cancelled. All that worry for nothing. This is the human condition in a nutshell. We're master storytellers, creating elaborate dramas in our heads about things that might never happen. Meanwhile, life, real, beautiful, messy life, is happening right now, and we're missing it because we're too busy rehearsing for disasters that exist only in our imagination. Here's a story that might sound familiar. Sarah worked at the same company for 15 years. Same desk, same routine, same complaints about management. She was miserable, but terrified to leave because, well, what if she couldn't find another job? What if the new place was worse? What if? What if? What if? Sound familiar? We do this with everything. Jobs, relationships, even our own limiting beliefs about ourselves. Buddhism calls this attachment, and it's basically the root of most human suffering. Not all suffering, let's be clear. Some pain is unavoidable, but a lot of our misery, that's self-inflicted through our desperate need to control and possess. The crazy part is, we think our attachments define us. I'm a marketing manager. I'm John's girlfriend. I'm the person who always has their act together. But these are just labels, stories we tell ourselves. And stories can be rewritten. Let me tell you about my friend Mike. For 20 years, he introduced himself as Mike the lawyer. That was his identity, his worth, his entire sense of self. When the firm downsized and he got laid off, he didn't just lose a job, he lost himself. Who was he if he wasn't Mike the lawyer? It took him months to realize he was still Mike. Still the guy who made terrible dad jokes. Still the one who remembered everyone's birthday. Still the person who could fix anything with duct tape and determination. The job was what he did, not who he was. Imagine holding a butterfly. Beautiful, right? But squeeze too tight and you'll crush it. Hold it with an open palm and it might stay. Might fly away. Either way, it's free to be what it is. That's how love should work, how life should work. We often confuse love with possession. True love, whether for a person, a dream, or even yourself, means allowing space for growth and change. Attachment, on the other hand, is fear disguised as love. It's the voice that says, don't change, don't leave, don't grow beyond what makes me comfortable. I've watched couples destroy beautiful relationships because they couldn't handle each other's growth. She gets a promotion that requires travel. and he feels threatened. He starts a new hobby that brings him joy, and she feels left out. Instead of celebrating each other's expansion, they try to shrink each other back into familiar boxes. But here's the beautiful paradox. The more we let go, the more we actually receive. Release your grip on that relationship and watch it either flourish or naturally end, both outcomes being exactly what needed to happen. Stop desperately chasing that promotion, and suddenly you're free to explore opportunities you never noticed before. My neighbor Lisa spent years trying to save her marriage to a man who clearly didn't want to be saved. She controlled his schedule, monitored his phone, tried to become the perfect wife he'd finally appreciate. The harder she gripped, the more he pulled away. When she finally let go, not out of defeat, but out of love for herself, something shifted. Either he'd step up or step out. But she was done being the relationship police. I learned this lesson the hard way during a particularly rough patch in my 20s. Lost my job, my apartment lease was ending, and my girlfriend decided she needed space. I felt like my world was ending. But you know what? It wasn't ending. It was changing. And change, even when it's scary, is often exactly what we need. That period of my life felt like being in a blender. Everything I thought was solid, career, relationship, living situation, suddenly became liquid. I was furious at the universe. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. But looking back now, I can see that everything had to fall apart so something better could be built. The job I lost was slowly killing my soul. The relationship that ended was built on fear, not love. The apartment I had to leave was in a neighborhood that never felt like home. Within 6 months, I had a job I actually enjoyed, was dating someone who made me laugh until my sides hurt, and lived in a place where I knew my neighbors' names. None of that would have happened if I hadn't been forced to let go of what wasn't working. Life is like an ocean. Waves come and go, storms pass, calm returns. When you're in the middle of a storm, it feels endless. But no storm lasts forever. The key is learning to surf the waves instead of fighting them. Fighting the current is exhausting. Going with the flow doesn't mean being passive. It means being smart about where you spend your energy. You can't control the waves, but you can learn to navigate them. I grew up near the coast, and my dad taught me to swim in the ocean from a young age. The first lesson? Don't fight the waves. If a big wave is coming, you dive under it or ride over it. You don't stand there and try to push it back. That's a battle you'll lose every time. Same principle applies to life. When a wave of change hits, job loss, breakup, health scare, whatever, you have choices. You can fight it and get tumbled around, or you can work with it and see where it takes you. This doesn't mean being passive or giving up on your dreams. It means recognizing what you can and can't control. You can't control whether you get laid off, but you can control how you respond. You can't control whether someone breaks up with you, but you can control how you heal and grow from the experience. The surfers I know aren't just athletes. They're philosophers. They understand timing, patience, and the art of working with forces bigger than themselves. They don't get angry at the ocean for not giving them perfect waves. They work with whatever the ocean offers. Non-attachment gets misunderstood a lot. People think it means becoming emotionally numb or not caring about anything. That's not it at all. Non-attachment means caring deeply while holding outcomes lightly. Think about a great teacher. They care deeply about their students' success, but they can't take the tests for them. They provide guidance, support, and knowledge, then let the students make their own choices. That's non-attachment in action. My high school English teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was like this. She was passionate about literature, genuinely cared about each student, and worked incredibly hard to help us understand complex texts. But she never tried to force understanding on us. She created the conditions for learning, then trusted the process. Same with life. Do your part, then let go of the outcome. This doesn't mean being lazy or irresponsible. It means understanding the difference between effort and control. I have a friend who's a brilliant writer. For years, she was obsessed with getting published by a specific magazine. She'd submit, get rejected, get bitter, submit again. It was consuming her life. She'd check her email obsessively, analyze every rejection letter for hidden meanings, and spiraled into depression when the responses were form letters. When she finally let go of that specific outcome and just focused on writing the best stories she could, amazing things happened. Not only did she get published by a different, better magazine, but she started enjoying writing again. The obsession with that one publication had poisoned her relationship with her craft. She still submits to magazines, still hopes for acceptance, but she doesn't let rejections define her worth as a writer. She does the work, sends it out, then moves on to the next story. That's non-attachment in practice. The paradox is that her writing improved dramatically once she stopped being desperate about publication. Desperation has a smell to it, and editors can sense it. Confidence and skill, on the other hand, are magnetic. Most of our attachments come from fear. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of not being enough. Fear keeps us small, keeps us stuck, keeps us from experiencing the fullness of life. But here's something interesting. Fear and excitement are physiologically almost identical. Rapid heartbeat, heightened awareness, surge of energy. The difference is in how we interpret these sensations. What if instead of, "I'm scared," we said, "I'm excited"? What if uncertainty wasn't a threat, but an adventure? I learned this during my first job interview out of college. I was terrified, sweating, shaking, convinced I'd embarrass myself. My older brother gave me advice that changed everything. Those butterflies in your stomach? That's not fear, that's excitement. Your body is getting ready for something important. Same physical sensations, completely different story. Instead of, "I'm scared I'll mess this up," I told myself, "I'm excited to show them what I can do." The butterflies were still there, but now they felt like allies instead of enemies. Never been skydiving, but I imagine there's that moment right before you jump where every cell in your body is screaming, "Don't do it." But the people who actually jump, they often describe it as the most freeing experience of their lives. Letting go of fear is like that jump, terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The fear doesn't disappear. You just learn to move through it. Fear isn't the enemy. Fear that keeps you from walking into traffic or trusting strangers with your bank account? That's helpful fear. But fear that keeps you from applying for your dream job or telling someone you love them? That's not protecting you. It's limiting you. The trick is learning to distinguish between helpful fear and limiting fear. Helpful fear keeps you alive. Limiting fear keeps you from living. My cousin Jake was terrified of public speaking, like physically ill at the thought of it. But his job required presentations, and his fear was holding back his career. Instead of avoiding speaking opportunities, he decided to face the fear head-on. He joined Toastmasters, started with 1-minute speeches, gradually worked up to longer presentations. The fear never completely went away, but it became manageable. Now he actually enjoys speaking to groups, not because he stopped being afraid, but because he learned that he could be afraid and do it anyway. Inner peace isn't about living in a monastery or chanting mantras all day. Though, if that's your thing, go for it. It's about finding that quiet space inside yourself that remains calm, regardless of what's happening around you. This space exists in everyone. It's not something you need to create or earn. It's something you need to uncover. Like archaeologists carefully brushing away dirt to reveal ancient treasures, we need to gently remove the layers of worry, attachment, and fear that obscure our natural state of peace. Hurricanes have a fascinating feature: the eye. Right in the center of all that chaos is a space of complete calm. That's what inner peace feels like. The storm might be raging around you, but you remain centered, clear, present. This doesn't mean problems disappear. It means you approach them from a place of clarity rather than panic. You make better decisions, you waste less energy on drama, and you actually enjoy life more. I remember the day my dad had his heart attack. The hospital, the ambulance, the uncertainty. Everything was chaos. But somewhere in the middle of all that terror, I found this strange calm. Not because I didn't care, but because panic wouldn't help anyone. I could be scared and functional. I could love him and stay clear-headed enough to ask the right questions, make necessary calls, support my mum. That's what inner peace looks like in real life. Not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to remain centered within difficulty. The ego. That voice in your head that's convinced it's the star of the show. The ego loves drama, loves being right, loves feeling important. It's also the source of most of our suffering. The ego tells us we're separate from everyone else, that we need to compete, that we're not enough as we are. It's like having a paranoid roommate who's constantly telling you everyone's out to get you. But here's the thing about the ego. It's not actually real. It's a construct, a story we've told ourselves for so long, we forgot it was just a story. Next time you're having an argument with someone, try this. Instead of focusing on how wrong they are, ask yourself what they're reflecting back to you. What aspect of yourself are you seeing in them that you don't like? This isn't about taking blame for everything. It's about recognizing that our reactions to others often say more about us than about them. When we can see this, arguments become opportunities for self-discovery rather than battles to be won. The people who annoy you most, they're usually showing you something about yourself you haven't accepted yet. The co-worker who's always trying to be the center of attention might be reflecting your own need for recognition. The friend who's constantly critical might be showing you your own inner critic. This realization was humbling and liberating for me. I spent years being irritated by people who were too sensitive, always taking things personally. Until I realized I was describing myself. I was projecting my own sensitivity onto others and getting angry at them for having traits I hadn't accepted in myself. Once I could own my sensitivity instead of judging it, I stopped being so reactive to sensitive people. In fact, I started appreciating that quality in others because I'd learned to appreciate it in myself. All this philosophy is great, but how do you actually apply it? How do you live these principles when your boss is being unreasonable, your family is driving you crazy, and your bank account is looking a little too lean? Start small. Begin with tiny acts of letting go. Maybe it's not correcting someone when they're wrong about something trivial. Maybe it's taking a different route to work without getting frustrated about traffic. Maybe it's just taking 3 deep breaths before reacting to something annoying. The 5-4-3-2-1 technique. When you feel overwhelmed or anxious, try this grounding exercise. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This brings you back to the present moment, out of the spiral of worry about the future or regret about the past. It's simple, it works, and you can do it anywhere. I use this technique in grocery store lines, waiting rooms, before difficult conversations. It's like hitting a reset button on your nervous system. Instead of being lost in whatever story your mind is spinning, you're grounded in physical reality. The first time I tried it, I was waiting for medical test results. My mind was creating every possible worst-case scenario. But when I focused on what I could actually see, hear, touch, smell, and taste, the anxiety loosened its grip. I was still concerned about the test results, but I wasn't torturing myself with imaginary futures. Instead of checking your phone first thing in the morning, try setting an intention for the day. Not a rigid plan, but a gentle direction. Today, I'll practice patience. Today, I'll notice beauty. Today, I'll let go of one small thing that's bothering me. This isn't about being perfect or achieving some enlightened state. It's about starting your day with conscious choice instead of unconscious reaction. I started doing this after realizing my mornings set the tone for everything that followed. If I began the day by immediately diving into emails and news, I felt frantic and behind before I even got out of bed. But if I took 5 minutes to breathe and set an intention, the whole day felt more manageable. Some days my intention is as simple as, I'll be kind to myself today. Other days it might be, I'll listen more than I speak, or I'll find something to be grateful for in every difficult situation. Relationships are where letting go becomes most challenging and most rewarding. Whether it's family, friends, or romantic partners, our closest relationships often trigger our deepest attachments and fears. The paradox is that the more we try to control our relationships, the more they suffer. The more we let go, the more authentic connection becomes possible. Good relationships are like dancing. Both people need to be responsive to each other, but neither should be controlling the entire dance. There's a give and take, a natural rhythm that emerges when both people are present and engaged, but not forceful. When one person tries to control the entire dance, it becomes awkward and forced. When both people are trying to lead, it's chaos. But when both people are attuned to each other and the music, something beautiful happens. I learned this lesson in my marriage. For the first few years, I was constantly trying to orchestrate our relationship. I'd plan every date, initiate every serious conversation, manage our social calendar. I thought I was being helpful, but I was actually being controlling. My wife finally told me she felt like a supporting character in her own life. I was so busy directing our relationship that she didn't have space to contribute her own ideas and energy. When I stepped back and let her take the lead sometimes, our relationship became more balanced and much more fun. Family relationships are particularly challenging because they're loaded with history, expectations, and ingrained patterns. You can't choose your family, but you can choose how you relate to them. My brother and I used to have the same argument every time we saw each other. He'd make some comment about my lifestyle choices, I'd get defensive, we'd rehash old grievances, and everyone would be miserable. This pattern repeated for years. The breakthrough came when I realized I couldn't control what he said, but I could control how I responded. Instead of taking the bait and getting defensive, I started responding with curiosity. That's an interesting perspective. Tell me more about why you think that. Sometimes he'd elaborate, and we'd have an actual conversation. Sometimes he'd realize he was being judgmental and back down. Either way, we stopped having the same fight over and over. The key was letting go of my need to change his mind or defend my choices. I couldn't control his opinions, but I could control my reaction to them. Letting go requires vulnerability. It requires admitting that we don't have all the answers, that we can't control everything, that we're human and imperfect, and sometimes scared. Our culture often sees vulnerability as weakness, but it's actually courage. It takes strength to admit when you're wrong. to ask for help, to show up authentically even when it's uncomfortable. We all have armor, defense mechanisms we've built to protect ourselves from hurt. But armor that protects us from pain also keeps out joy, love, and connection. At some point, we have to decide whether the protection is worth the isolation. Letting go often means taking off some of that armor. Not all at once, not recklessly, but gradually, with people who've earned our trust. I used to be the guy who had everything figured out. Never asked for help, never admitted uncertainty, never let anyone see me struggle. This armor served me well in some situations, but it also kept me lonely and disconnected. The shift happened during a particularly difficult period at work. I was drowning, but too proud to admit it. Finally, a colleague noticed I was struggling and asked if I wanted to grab coffee and talk. Instead of my usual, "I'm fine," I said yes. That conversation changed everything. Not because she solved my problems, but because she listened without judgment and shared some of her own struggles. I realized that vulnerability doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And humans connect with other humans, not with perfect facades. The past is gone. The future hasn't happened yet. Right now, this moment, is the only time you actually have any power to change anything. Yet most of us spend our mental energy everywhere, except the present. Mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some Zen-like state. It's simply about noticing what's happening right now without immediately jumping to judgment or trying to fix it. Your breath is always with you, always in the present moment. When your mind starts spiraling into worry or regret, come back to your breath, not to control it, just to notice it. Inhale, exhale. Simple, accessible, powerful. This isn't about meditation retreats or special techniques. This is about using the most basic function of being alive as a way to return to the present moment. I was skeptical of this advice for years. It seemed too simple, too obvious. How could paying attention to breathing possibly help with real problems? But when I actually tried it, not as a cure-all, but as a basic tool for staying grounded, I was surprised by how effective it was. During stressful meetings, instead of letting my mind race with worst-case scenarios, I'd take a few conscious breaths. It didn't solve the problems being discussed, but it kept me calm enough to think clearly and contribute constructively. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our freedom to choose. Most of the time, we react automatically, unconsciously. But when we create a pause, even just a few seconds, we can choose our response instead of being hijacked by our conditioning. This pause is where letting go happens. In that brief moment, you can choose to release the anger, the fear, the need to be right. You can choose a response that serves you better than your automatic reaction. Letting go without compassion is just suppression. Real letting go is infused with kindness toward ourselves and others. We're all doing the best we can with what we have. That doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does create space for understanding and forgiveness. Self-compassion is especially important. We're often our own harshest critics, holding ourselves to impossible standards while giving others grace for their mistakes. Before you speak to yourself, ask, would I talk to my best friend this way? If the answer is no, then find a kinder way to communicate with yourself. You're stuck with you for life. Might as well make it a friendly relationship. I spent years berating myself for every mistake, every imperfection, every moment of weakness. The inner critic was relentless and cruel. It wasn't until someone asked me if I'd ever talk to another person the way I talked to myself that I realized how abusive my internal dialogue had become. Learning self-compassion was like learning a new language. It felt foreign and awkward at first. But gradually, as I practiced treating myself with the same kindness I'd show a friend, everything started to shift. I made fewer mistakes because I wasn't paralyzed by fear of imperfection. I recovered faster from setbacks because I wasn't wasting energy on self-flagellation. Compassion isn't about making excuses or lowering standards. It's about creating an internal environment where growth and healing are possible. When you start letting go, something interesting happens. Other people notice. Not because you're preaching or trying to change them, but because you're different. You're calmer, more present, less reactive. This gives others permission to do the same. Change spreads, not through force or persuasion, but through example. When you stop participating in drama, drama has less power. When you respond to conflict with calm, you create space for resolution. Be a lighthouse. Lighthouses don't run around the ocean looking for ships to save. They stay in one place, shining their light consistently, and ships navigate toward them when they need guidance. That's what letting go does. It makes you a lighthouse, steady, consistent, helpful without being pushy. My friend Sarah transformed her entire family dynamic this way. For years, family gatherings were minefields of old resentments and petty conflicts. Sarah had tried everything: mediating, confronting, avoiding. Nothing worked. Finally, she decided to focus only on her own behavior. She stopped taking sides in family arguments. She responded to criticism with curiosity instead of defensiveness. She offered support without trying to fix everyone's problems. At first, some family members were suspicious of the change, but over time, the whole dynamic shifted. Without Sarah feeding the drama, it naturally died down. Other family members started following her lead, responding more calmly to conflict. She didn't change anyone else directly. She just changed herself and trusted the ripple effect. Letting go isn't a destination you reach and then you're done. It's a practice, a way of life, a continuous choice to stay open rather than closed, flexible rather than rigid, trusting rather than controlling. Some days you'll nail it. Other days you'll find yourself gripping onto something so tightly your knuckles turn white. Both are okay. The goal isn't perfection. It's awareness and gentle course correction. Think of your life as a garden. Some seasons are for planting, some for tending, some for harvesting, some for letting things die back so new growth can emerge. Letting go is like composting, taking what's no longer useful and transforming it into nourishment for what's coming next. Nothing in a garden stays the same forever. Flowers bloom and fade, trees grow and shed their leaves, seasons cycle through death and rebirth. The gardener's job isn't to prevent change, but to work with it, to create conditions where growth is possible. Same with life. You can't prevent change, loss, or endings, but you can learn to work with these natural cycles instead of fighting them. You can find beauty in autumn leaves even as they fall. You can appreciate winter's rest even as you look forward to spring's renewal. At the end of the day, letting go is about freedom. Freedom from the exhausting need to control everything. Freedom from the weight of carrying grudges. Freedom from the prison of perfectionism. Freedom to respond rather than react. Freedom to be authentically yourself. This freedom isn't given to you by anyone else. It's something you choose, moment by moment, breath by breath. It's the freedom to say yes to what serves you and no to what doesn't. It's the freedom to change your mind, to grow, to become who you're meant to be. The rocks in your backpack. You don't have to carry them anymore. You can set them down, one by one, whenever you're ready. The path ahead is lighter than you think. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. You're already free. You just needed to remember. Life has taught me that letting go isn't a one-time event. It's seasonal. Just like nature doesn't shed all its leaves at once, we don't release all our attachments in a single moment of enlightenment. Some things we let go of in spring, full of hope and new beginnings. Others fall away in autumn, when we're ready to release what no longer serves us. I've noticed that my biggest breakthroughs in letting go often came disguised as breakdowns. That job I lost, that I thought would ruin my career. It led me to work I actually loved. The relationship that ended when I thought I'd found the one. It taught me what real love actually looks like. The friendship that dissolved after years of trying to make it work. It created space for deeper, more authentic connections. There's something almost cruel about how life forces us to let go of things we're not ready to release. But there's also something deeply compassionate about it. Like a parent taking a dangerous toy away from a child, the universe sometimes removes things from our lives, not to punish us, but to protect us from our own limited vision. We all have a mental museum where we keep exhibits of who we used to be. The high school athlete, the person who was once married, the version of ourselves who lived in that other city, had that other job, loved that other person. We wander through these exhibits like tourists in our own lives, sometimes with nostalgia, sometimes with regret. But here's what I've learned. You can visit the museum, but you can't live there. Those past selves were real, they mattered. They shaped who you are today, but they're not who you are now. And trying to resurrect them is like trying to wear clothes that no longer fit. My friend Rachel spent 5 years trying to get back to who she was before her divorce. She'd look at old photos and say, "I just want to feel like myself again." But the self she was mourning was someone who had never experienced divorce, never learned to live alone, never discovered her own strength in the darkness. The woman she was becoming was actually more interesting, more resilient, more authentic than the woman she was trying to resurrect. The day she stopped trying to go backward and started getting curious about who she was becoming, everything changed. She wasn't the same person she was before the divorce, and that was actually good news. She was someone better. There's a kind of dissatisfaction that's sacred. Not the restless, never-satisfied craving that keeps us chasing the next thing, but the gentle discontent that whispers, "This isn't quite right. There's something more for you." This sacred dissatisfaction is what makes us outgrow relationships that were once perfect for us. It's what makes us leave jobs that look good on paper but feel empty in practice. It's what makes us question beliefs we once held without doubt. Learning to trust this inner compass has been one of the most important skills I've developed. It's subtle, not the dramatic voice that screams for revolution, but the quiet knowing that says, it's time to move on. I stayed in a job for 2 years longer than I should have because I couldn't distinguish between sacred dissatisfaction and ungrateful complaining. The pay was good, the benefits were excellent, my colleagues were nice. On paper, I had no reason to be unhappy. But every morning I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, like I was betraying something essential about myself. It took me months to realize that this heaviness wasn't depression or ingratitude. It was my soul trying to get my attention. When I finally listened and made the change, that heaviness lifted immediately. Not because the new situation was perfect, but because I was finally aligned with my own growth. Plans are beautiful things. They give us direction, purpose, something to work toward. But they can also become prisons if we hold them too tightly. The art is learning to plan with intention, but hold those plans with open hands. Every significant breakthrough in my life has happened when my original plan fell apart. The college I didn't get into led me to a better program. The relationship that ended opened my heart to deeper love. The business idea that failed taught me lessons that made the next venture successful. There's a Japanese concept called wabi-sabi that finds beauty in imperfection and impermanence. It's the aesthetic of the cracked vase that's repaired with gold, making it more beautiful than it was before it broke. That's what happens when we let our broken plans become the raw material for something better. My cousin David had his entire life mapped out by age 22. Medical school, residency, specialty training, the perfect practice in his hometown. Every step was planned, every milestone marked on his calendar. Then he got sick during his second year of medical school. Nothing life-threatening, but chronic enough that the intense schedule became impossible. He was devastated. This wasn't just a plan falling apart. This was his identity crumbling. Who was he if he wasn't going to be Dr. David? But in the space that opened up when medicine became impossible, he discovered a passion for medical writing. Now he helps doctors communicate complex ideas to patients, bridging the gap between medical expertise and human understanding. His illness didn't destroy his path. It redirected it towards something he never would have discovered otherwise. Letting go doesn't always happen in dramatic moments of release. Most of the time, it's practiced in tiny, almost invisible surrenders throughout the day. The moment you choose not to correct someone who's wrong about something trivial. The breath you take before responding to a frustrating text. The decision to let someone merge into your lane without getting annoyed. These micro-surrenders might seem insignificant, but they're actually training your nervous system to live in a state of openness rather than resistance. Every time you choose flow over fight, you're strengthening your ability to let go when it really matters. I started practicing micro-surrenders in grocery store lines. Instead of getting frustrated when someone had 15 items in the express lane, I'd take a deep breath and find something to appreciate about the delay. Maybe it gave me time to remember something I'd forgotten. Maybe the cashier needed a moment of patience after dealing with difficult customers all day. Maybe I needed to slow down anyway. These tiny practices transformed my relationship with inconvenience. Traffic jams became opportunities for podcasts or music I loved. Long waits at restaurants became chances for deeper conversation. Rain on my beach day became an excuse to explore a bookstore I'd been meaning to visit. One of the hardest things to let go of is the need for everyone to like us, approve of us, understand our choices. But growth often requires disappointing people who preferred the smaller version of yourself. When you stop participating in gossip, some friends will be confused. When you set boundaries with family members who are used to unlimited access, they might be hurt. When you leave a situation that's not serving you, people who are still stuck there might feel judged by your departure. This doesn't mean being cruel or insensitive. It means understanding that you can't grow and please everyone at the same time. Sometimes love looks like disappointing people in small ways to avoid betraying yourself in big ways. My sister went through this when she decided to stop drinking. It wasn't that she was an alcoholic. She just realized that alcohol wasn't adding anything positive to her life and was probably making her anxiety worse. But her friend group was built around happy hours, wine nights, and boozy brunches. When she started ordering sparkling water instead of cocktails, some friends took it personally. A few friendships didn't survive her choice to get sober. That was painful, but it also revealed something important. Those friendships were based more on shared habits than genuine connection. The friends who truly cared about her well-being celebrated her decision and found new ways to spend time together. She had to let go of the version of herself that prioritized being liked over being authentic. That loss made space for relationships based on who she actually was, not who she thought she should be to fit in. We live in a culture that worships certainty. We want guarantees, 5-year plans, security, predictable outcomes. But life's greatest gifts often come wrapped in uncertainty. The job opportunity that seems risky, the relationship that doesn't fit your usual type, the creative project that might fail spectacularly. Learning to be comfortable with not knowing has been one of my greatest teachers. Not the anxious uncertainty that keeps you paralyzed, but the excited uncertainty that says, I don't know what's going to happen, and that's actually thrilling. This shift from fear-based uncertainty to curiosity-based uncertainty changed everything for me. Instead of trying to figure out every possible outcome before making a decision, I started asking different questions. What would I try if I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do if I trusted that I could handle whatever happens? What's calling to me, even though I can't see the whole staircase? The path forward revealed itself one step at a time, the way it always does. But I had to be willing to take the first step without seeing the destination. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.